What's up, YouTube? My name's Cheddar, and welcome to Saltworthy, where I'm going to talk about things that make me salty and explain why it's important. So I'm expecting the B-word discourse to get a little dicey. Because if there's anything you can count on the internet for, it's cis men's unsolicited opinions. Oh, f***. Okay, I recognize the irony here. But you know, we're not going to talk about that one. Yet. But being fair, that might be a whole nother video, because I already have to address something important. And you have no idea what white men have to deal with. Okay. But in all seriousness, it isn't easy work to address your biases. Just a reminder to us pasty devils that everybody has to deal with these same issues. So as hard as it may be, this is work we have to do for ourselves that was put on us by the white supremacist neoliberal establishment. With that being said, I won't feign innocence. It is a constant effort on my part to address the ignorant crap that my boomer-ass parents instilled in me. They, of course, taught me to be racist without knowing it, but more relevant to this conversation, I was shown how to mistreat, objectify, and place unrealistic expectations on women. I've even done things that I'm not proud of, like being a little pushy in an effort to get a woman to put out. And when you're doing that, you're just looking at people as objects. There was also a period of time in my life where I didn't value women who didn't fit within a certain beauty standard and ignored women beyond their ability to fit into that beauty standard. I'm not going to stand here and say that the journey's been easy, nor is it even over. I constantly have to challenge what I think to discover more casual sexisms. Many a man has convinced themselves that they're not sexist. Much in the same way that liberals convince themselves that they're not anti-black. The main difference can be found in the unrestricted use of the B word. So why is it not a social taboo for men to say the B word? And I would say that that's probably because of misogyny. But to get a clearer picture of why that is, let's use an example. The N-word is understood culturally to be a possession of the black community, and it's reserved exclusively for in-house use. One big reason white people adhere to the social rules surrounding the N-word is because of the perceived consequences for such an action. Those consequences are perceived as a threat to a white person's personal safety, which is amplified by anti-blackness. Anti-blackness causes a lot of white people to fear violence from black people, even when that expectation is unreasonable. Black women are often robbed of their femininity due to anti-blackness, and so then we're left with the question. So when even the F word is considered an off-limit slur, the slur used most often to put down effeminate men, why do we give special treatment to the B word? And to do that, I think we're going to have to do a little more exploration into misogyny. The B word, instead of being viewed as the slur that it is viewed like someone is calling someone an ungendered personal insult. I'd say this perception occurs because men feel such a freedom to liberally throw that word around in order to emasculate each other. The problem with this, of course, is that it creates social stigma in a patriarchal society where likening things to femininity in a negative context becomes a natural foregone conclusion. And it's so easily forgotten that there's really no gendered insults specifically for men, at least none that carry any weight. While I don't want to downplay the harm of bullying, I will point out that a lot of these new terms that have popped up specifically for men are in retaliation to the oppression that women have always faced in society. They also tend to call out toxic behaviors that are exhibited by a wide array of men and young boys. I'm sure I'm gonna get some comments from someone telling me how hard it is when they get called a manlet. The truth is that most insults used exclusively for men are ones that have popped up quite recently in the era of pop feminism, and they honestly do no real harm, because women are still systemically oppressed. I'd say that the reason this word is given special treatment is because of its association to women, whereas other off-limits terms may be more gender ambiguous. Gender ambiguous terms tend to default towards the cultural norm. Due to the patriarchal nature of society, men are given dominion over the cultural zeitgeist and able to lay claims to things that probably should have been claimed already by women. It may not seem like much, but it's through these small ways that we begin to learn to value one gender presentation over another. By listening to the man speak first, and not allowing any other gender presentation, or even a less favored man, to speak about their problems in the same light. The most obvious example of this is with Christians giving their opinions, and most of those are just bigoted falsities. Once spoken, they can rely on the ignorance of the audience to project their biases and view the opinions of bigots in the same light as actual facts spoken by disenfranchised people in an attempt to educate, while viewing the disenfranchised person as disrespectful when they don't allow space for a bigot to remain bigoted. But the important thing to consider here is that one person's beliefs are being challenged versus a whole nother person's identity being challenged. The potential consequences for losing in the marketplace of ideas is drastically different, which is why triggering your political opponent is not a real political position. Take, for instance, the recent assault on Suki Hana. She said on Twitter that she was afraid to stand up for herself, and rightfully so. Because, as per the usual, there was a mob of men online to make excuses for men who participate in violent behavior towards women. And the really sick part is they're coming to make excuses for this supposedly great guy if you're willing to ignore the current situation. For many girls and women, it's not so simple as finding a nice guy that you think is cute. Because is he a nice guy? Or is he a nice guy? Or maybe he's secretly into Andrew Tate. Or maybe he doesn't need Andrew Tate to be a misogynist. The point is, the world is a terrifying place for women. Oh yeah, women, just so you know, there are two types of guys in this world. Assholes that really won't care about you, and nice guys. Oh yeah, by the way, both of them are equally likely to assault you.
Good luck with dating.
Maybe if they were such nice guys, they wouldn't assault someone in the first place. Coercion is bad enough on its own. I can't imagine what goes through someone's head to force themselves on a woman. That's disgusting. We're not really taught how to process our deepest and most complicated emotions, let alone do we know how to express them. But there's always been something that's bothering me about the way we teach young men to interact with women. And it's through this frame of analysis that we can begin to see a problem. I had a paralyzing fear of rejection when I was a kid. And my stepdad's advice was, well, just walk up and talk to a girl and ask her out. Men need to stop teaching boys that girls are just objects to be interacted with at their leisure. We teach boys that they're entitled to girls' time when we tell them to just walk up and talk to them. We teach boys not to respect girls' boundaries when we tell them to just be persistent. We teach boys that they're not complete until they have a girl, as if she's some kind of possession to be collected. And changing this all begins with changing the way that we talk about girls and women. Persistence is not a pickup strategy, and persistence alone will not change any girl's opinion on whether she likes someone or not. Girls don't have to like you because you possess a specific trait, such as kindness for other human beings. You shouldn't do anything based upon what other people are going to think about you. That's manipulative. An embodiment of a specific trait in order to gain the approval of a fair maiden is fucking manipulative. And most important of all, we need to teach boys that changing these things isn't about getting results. It's about empathy. You may feel you owe nothing to society, but society knows nothing to you unless you spit in someone's face. What exactly would you expect to happen for acting so provocatively? Now, for those that didn't catch that, I'm specifically using victim-blaming language. This is the language we use against women when they speak out against people who assault them. And I guess I could see how some people might get confused, that it's both a social taboo to participate in SA, and yet there's also the reality that this is normalized behavior among boys and men. And so for that, we'll reference back to the behaviors that I talked about that we're teaching young boys. Persistence and entitlement to women's time, or in other words, an excuse to ignore when she's just not that into you. And that could be bad enough when it's just an annoying jerk that won't take a hint, but it could be a lot worse than that. Objectification allows us to devalue women based upon their appearance in the same way that we're already taught to not respect their personhood and individuality. And we have communities of men actively participating in manipulation tactics while other guys stand idly by, complicit in that behavior. You may have heard this sentiment summed up in the immortal phrase of bros before hoes. And with all those pieces in place, we can begin to see how culture's been encouraged to thrive. Having a system of shame certainly doesn't excuse men at large for not standing up for what's right. There is a lot of misunderstanding around the concept of consent, which deeply exacerbates the harm caused to women. Our ignorance becomes their penance. In my experience, men are broadly against SA, and would likely assault a guy for crossing the line in a direct way. But that's where things get a little bit complicated, because that willingness to make excuses for guys turns into this tendency for people to look the other direction. Once two consenting adults enter a bedroom, what happens from there is rarely anybody else's business. In fact, it's a bit of a taboo in the bro code to cock block, and I don't think we need to define that term because its usage and meaning are completely nebulous and for a reason. Besides, guys throw around the term cock block like Jonah Hill uses therapy speech online.
Bruh.
But in this case, it would mean interrupting anything that goes on behind closed doors. So you can see how that might be a little bit abused. Liberalism teaches us that if both people consented to begin drinking at the same time and they're both drunk, with no real measure on how drunk either one of them is, anything she agrees to from there on is considered consensual. Without understanding how different society is for boys and girls, no boys will ever understand what women have to endure. And it's even hard to understand for boys once they do begin to listen. Men tend to fail to stand up for women, but that isn't the whole picture. Taking a stance can be a life-changing experience, for better or for worse. I will say from my personal experience, to anyone who needs to hear this, I think it's always better to take a stance. Keeping silent about things you believe is a waste of time, because it only serves to make you more available to people with poor belief systems. Basically, if you leave room for bigotry, you'll end up next to bigotry no matter what. But if we approach the topic with nuance and empathy, we have to acknowledge that it's never as simple as that. When you're young and lonely, or in other words, desperate, and inside of a system with perverse incentive structures, the easiest thing in the world to do is turn a blind eye. With no incentive at all for critical thinking, it becomes increasingly inconvenient to critically engage with the real problem, because That's how capitalism's still fucking here. With that being said, this isn't an attempt to make excuses, just to understand why more boys and young men aren't willing to stand up for women when they're being attacked by the B word or facing down more direct harm. A big part of the problem is boys being unable and unwilling to recognize red flags in their friends that may lead to harm of women. Now, it can't all be written off on ignorance, but we are talking about children all the way up to young adult men. And just because your brain is fully developed doesn't mean you possess all the information. So really, this is for anyone that needs to hear it, but if something doesn't feel right, say something. If you do say something, it's possible that no consequences will befall you. Maybe just talk to her about it and make sure she's comfortable. But you should do what's right for the sake of doing what's right. And when someone speaks up about your behavior, it's on you to critically engage with the criticism and not deflect or make excuses. But the opinion that matters is that of the potential victim. Sometimes you could even rightfully call someone out, and a girl might play defense for him just because she's terrified of what the consequences might be once you're all out of their sight. All you can do is try your best to stand up for the people that want and need your support. Saying something, in the worst of cases, can end up with only the person who speaks up being the one to get consequences. But if that's the case, you should really find friends that respect you anyways. But usually, more often than not, there's gonna be divisions in the group and people will be forced to choose sides. But either way, the person who speaks up and the person you speak up for will just be better off for it. Now, I could encourage girls and women who watch this video to speak up for themselves, but that would be approaching this issue from the wrong side. Because I can't possibly know the particulars of an individual woman's situation and if she's safe to speak up at all. So I must call on men to be more aware of the community they create when they are with other men. There are lots of ways to make your space more inclusive. One of the simple ways that I'm kind of making this video for is to stop using the B word. And when you see another man speaking that way about a woman, don't tolerate the hate speech. This does require us to speak up and then stand in the fire that we've created regardless of the consequences. The one thing you can be sure of is that the harshest of consequences that we can face for speaking up are pretty minuscule in the comparison to what a woman would face if we don't speak up. And this all ties back to what I was saying earlier about changing the way we treat and talk about women. If we stop allowing women to be disrespected in our presence, we'll gain more respect for them through that action alone. This won't fix the whole problem, but it would make a drastic difference, especially the more men that back this cause. Now, to address the purpose of this video, I am still attempting to foster conversation. I would like to see women's opinions upheld and supported. My opinion on the matter is we should just stop using the B word. And obviously that would cause a massive cultural shift, but we kind of need one in order for more people to back the cause. It begins with you. And it starts with creating environments that are actually equitable and accessible. Now to address the elephant in the room, which we're not animating this time because, honestly, that would be just rude. So we're gonna have to talk about toxic masculinity. The environment cultivated by large groups of cis men is very rampant with very toxic behavior. This can make the spaces that we cultivate very intolerant and unwelcoming. We need to take accountability and stop treating each other, frankly, like garbage. Now, before you click off, let me explain how it's all capitalism's fault. This is tongue-in-cheek, but if we can acknowledge the unnecessary pressure we place on ourselves to compete as modern capitalism demands, we can begin to decommodify our perceptions of self. Capitalism warps our ability to perceive value and twists our perception of what should and shouldn't be commodified.
Our bodies and lives shouldn't have to be commodified for us to survive.
So remember to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. But seriously, our value can't be calculated in dollars or dictated to us by outside factors. And you can't find your own value in repressive atmospheres. Young boys are taught that our emotions hold no value, and therefore we seek out emotionally repressive spaces. Groups of boys and young men tend to participate in rituals of cruelty in order to help each other desensitize, which can make the space uncomfortable for even cishet gender-conforming white guys, let alone everyone who faces additional struggles. Young men are taught early to repress their emotions and likely become afraid to contend with the tsunami that would ensue upon opening the floodgates. Many young men will have already clicked off this video because they don't have the capacity and the courage to confront these demons. In a white supremacist patriarchy where white gender-conforming men are favored, if the environment is intolerant for some of us, then we literally don't have the capacity to understand how much more difficult it is for a disenfranchised person. And I certainly won't be helping you to understand that here. It's not that simple. I, a white guy, can't give you all the answers. So you have to go listen to a diverse perspective from diverse groups of people. Everyone has an opinion, and when you put them together, it becomes a beautiful cornucopia of human experience. We need to take accountability and do the work to understand and control our emotions, rather than pretending as if we don't feel them. We need to support each other through our emotional journeys and allow space for each other's emotional transformation while still calling out bullshit behavior. This is the only way for the spaces that we cultivate to avoid becoming the inevitable sausage fest of loneliness that comes from existing in sexist spaces. But also, for the benefit of everyone, just be more inclusive and get educated. Not every moment of our lives needs to be an exercise in endurance and conditioning. It's actually harder to confront your emotions, and you prove it when you are too afraid to confront them. So feel free to prove me wrong. If you need to know where to look for more information, I'm gonna link some YouTube channels in the description. Either way, I wish you luck on your journey, and I hope you find this video helpful or entertaining. Feel free to check out my other video. Like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate all engagement. Well, I'll see you in the next one.